Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study video series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. I'm Daniel, this is Gary, and we are working our way through the Gospel of Mark. That we just started last week. So we're in week 2 of this, and we're going to be covering chapters 3, 4, and about halfway through 5.
Yeah. So it's cool, right? So we learned in our first week that Mark wasn't an eyewitness to many of the things happened, but he was a witness to some of the things that happened, and he seemed to be more of a helper for Peter, right? Mm-hmm. And we see that he decided to write down Peter's version, and that's what
tradition tells us anyway.
Right.
Even if that's what we go with.
He doesn't say that, but it seems to be written to definitely Gentiles, and probably written to Gentiles who were in Rome at the time too. So we find things like where he has to explain some Jewish traditions in there, and that's why that thought process is there. Yeah. But as I'm sure everybody noticed, it's a quick pace, Immediately Jesus got up and did this. Immediately this happened. Then this happened. Then this happened. Yeah. And you'd brought up last week, or I made you bring up last week, that Mark was writing Jesus as a servant. Yeah. And as a servant, you don't care about the background. Obviously we do care about the background of Jesus, but as a servant, you don't. And so that's why there's very little background leading up to Jesus starting his teaching.
Yeah, he just jumps straight in.
Boom. Yeah.
And there's not even a lot of teaching. There's not these long discourses, these long sermons or whatever. The teaching, for the most part, is really short, to the point, and there's a lot more attention on the action that he's doing. The miracles, the where he's going, just this
and he's always going someplace, and then he went here, and then he went here, and then he went here.
So the Greek word for immediately, I think, is used, it's like 30 or 40 times in the book of Mark. More than
I can believe that.
More than any other fixed narrative like this. I mean, just kind of immediately. Right. It's like it's like he almost never rests. Now, we did see a little bit of a rest.
Yeah, exactly.
But not much.
Right, but even then, he got up early and talked to his master, taking from the servant standpoint. Yeah. Which I thought was kind of cool. Yep. So there's a bunch of different stories that are in here. Bang, bang, bang,
bang.
Usually
like 4 or 5 verses, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, so there's too many for us to hit. So like we said before, we're not going to hit all of these, but I'm going to pick the ones I want.
You pick your favorite, I'll pick my favorite, exactly. They'll pick their favorite, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, right. So I got a couple that I want to make sure we go through for this week. And the first one is Jesus healing a withered hand. Mm-hmm. So the big deal here isn't Jesus performing a miracle. It actually is, when is he doing it?
Yep. And in front of who is he doing it?
Yeah, so he's healing on the Sabbath. Yeah. Right? And that is considered work which is against the Mosaic law. And of course there were people there and I see them as, the people today. Oh,
whatever the thing,
there's always going to be something against it. But Jesus,
offense du jour.
But Jesus kicks back and he says, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath, or is it evil? To save a life or destroy it?" So he is setting the groundwork for what's gonna come up later.
Because even under the law, even under the Mosaic law, if your ox falls into a pit on the Sabbath day, it is okay to drag. Yeah, you don't have to wait till tomorrow.
Which is how much of the rules are you going to follow?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's built into it. And so Jesus is saying, literally, you would pull your donkey, you would pull your sheep, you would pull your ox out of a pit, but I can't heal somebody. Right. Come on.
Right. And last week it was, I can't eat grain.
Right,
kind of the same,
and that's
similar.
That's sort of I think this is one of the funny things about the gospel writers, is that they emphasize the miracles that he did on the Sabbath. It's like, did he not do miracles the rest of the week? Did he just do them on the Sabbath?
Hold on, wait. 5:59, 6.
Yes, okay. And so this whole, the Sabbath was made for people and not people for the Sabbath. Why did God give it? But even in the law, and that's what his point is. It's you're supposed to do good on the Sabbath, and isn't it better for me to heal a man here while we've got him?
Right.
People are gathered at the synagogue. Hey, now's a good time. Healed.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the other important thing here is he healed the man, but the Pharisees went out and started plotting with the Herodians to assassinate him.
To assassinate him, yeah.
Yeah. So they had talked about it beforehand. If this happens again, we have to take care of him.
Yeah.
So now it has happened again. So now they're going to start actively looking for a way to assassinate him.
Yeah, they're making plans at this point.
Yep. So who's the Herodians?
So Herod was the king. Herod the Great was the king who tried to kill Jesus when he was a toddler, right?
Right.
He died, and then the area was split into his 4 sons and their rule. So we've got these Herods, this Herodian family that's sort of ruling the area.
Is that where Tetrarch came from?
Yeah, Tetrarch is a 4.
Okay.
Tetra is a 4.
Tetris.
Yeah, right. Exactly. An arche is ruler. So a tetrarch is one of 4 rulers, basically. Right. And so the Herodians were the ruling class. Some people will link the Herodians with the Sadducees, because the Pharisees and the Sadducees were 2 sort of ruling groups in Israel.
Yeah.
Pharisees were more focused on the law, and they would be sort of like the conservative party. Sadducees were more focused on politics. It would be more of the liberal party. And so they weren't focused on the law as much. In fact, they didn't even they didn't even accept anything that wasn't Pentateuch. The first 5 books of everything else was good commentary, good teaching, but if it wasn't linked back to the books of Moses, they didn't consider it authoritative. So the Herodians and the Sadducees were linked a lot because of the political party. So it's just anybody. Sometimes they're talking about the chief priests, sometimes they're talking about the scribes, sometimes it's the Pharisees, sometimes the Sadducees, sometimes it's the Herodians. It's just all the leaders, anybody that they could get on their side.
Right. Everybody wants people on their side.
Yeah.
The next one I wanted to talk about was a pointing of the 12 apostles. Mm-hmm. Just from the standpoint, they went out to a mountain. Jesus appointed the 12. And it says in Mark, so he could send them to preach and have authority to cast out demons. Mm-hmm. So the order's a little different than other ones. Not a huge difference. We talked about it. Some things do seem different in Mark than other books. It's not a doctrinal type thing. But Jesus is picking the 12 and giving them authority. It seems on day one. I don't think it is. But they have the authority to go off and preach in His name and also heal in His name, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, you say it doesn't sound like day one. I mean, it is sort of day one from their commissioning. So, but the thing is that they're commissioning as apostles. Jesus at this point is well into his second year, maybe past the halfway point of his ministry. I was going to
say, he's only 3.5 years of ministry, right?
Yeah, something like that, 3 to 4. And the first year, the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, don't even cover, really. Yeah. John talks about it more. So it's not like they were doing ministry as apostles for 3 years or anything. Right. This is well into his ministry before he appoints them. Now he's multiplying his ministry. I need multiple people going out instead of just me preaching everywhere and you following. Right? I do like the fact that verse 14 says that he appointed 12 so that they would be with him and he could send them out to preach. There's a training that's going. They're not just following anymore. Now he's actually training them and preparing them for ministry. So yeah, it's a little bit more than they had been doing for a while.
Yeah, good. Do you have any other ones that you wanted to cover?
Well, we've got the big rejection here of which is going to lead into chapter 4, the big rejection of Jesus was doing these miracles, and the people were saying, could this really be the Son of David? Could this be Messiah? Right. And the religious leaders are like, nope, no way. In fact, he's doing this through the power of Satan.
Right.
And Jesus said, whoa,
yeah.
You are about ready to cross a line that there is no coming back. And the point here is that it is not, people ask me all the time, have I committed the unpardonable sin? Can we do it? We can't do it. Okay. The only sin that can't be forgiven today is like not believing in Jesus, right? Everything else is forgiven. The thing here is that Nicodemus was a Pharisee. And John chapter 3 says that he had already come to Jesus and said, we know, he was a spokesman, we know that you are from God. Because no one could do these things that you are doing if God was not with him.
Right, miracles.
Right. So they had already recognized that Jesus was from God with God's power. Now they're saying, no, he's not from God. He's using Satan's power. So this is a rejection of what they already knew. And so then we go into chapter 4.
Well, so I think also what makes it so bad is it's a deliberate lie.
Yeah.
On there, and that's the part, like you were saying, with the rejection.
And they're leading the people. They're supposed to be leading the people to Messiah. They're supposed to be leading the people to God. If anybody should have recognized him, it should have been the religious leaders.
Exactly.
And they did the exact opposite. And when the people are clamoring, could this be? They're like, nope, we're going to take you in a completely opposite direction.
Right. So we see a huge shift in the way Jesus teaches.
Yeah.
Right. So he starts teaching in parables.
Yep.
So you had said before that this is actually a compassion.
I think so.
So why do you think that?
Because throughout the Bible, we see that God holds people responsible for the revelation they have. And if
the revelation is not the revelation,
not like the book of the Revelation, but the information.
Their understanding.
Yeah, the information. And that can be creation, it can be our conscience, it can be the law, it can be the Bible, the gospel, whatever, right? So if somebody accepts and believes whatever revelation that they have in front of them, God will give them more, right? He will keep giving it until they, accept, until they, whatever, reject. If they reject it, they reject what they have, he's not under any obligation to give them more because they're just going to keep rejecting it. And by giving them more information, he's actually almost, in a sense, giving them more to reject and heaping condemnation on them, which would make it worse. So what Jesus does is he says, okay, you're rejecting me now. You're not listening. You don't want to hear from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach in parables and have a two-pronged approach. People who believe in me, people who are accepting what I'm saying, they'll be able to hear it, they'll be able to understand it, or at least they'll come and ask, and I'll explain it to them.
Right.
People who are rejecting me, they're going to hear a nice story.
Yep, and then go on with their lives.
And that's it.
Right.
And so it really is an act of, I think, grace and mercy where he is preventing them from getting more information that they would reject more and then be condemned more.
Yeah. So would you consider this the rejection of the nation of Israel?
This is where it begins. Yeah.
Okay,
so, this is where it begins. Ultimately, I guess if you really wanted, if you had to put a pin in it, the ultimate rejection is Passion Week. I mean, they crucify him, right? But this is really where it leads up to it, right? And so as his ministry changes, it slows down toward the crowds. He pulls back from the religious leaders, more alone time with the apostles,
right?
And people who are actually searching him, seeking him out.
Yep,
he'll do anything for them.
Right. So we definitely start seeing this. So in chapter 4, we see the teaching in parables. We do see some of the pulling back, and definitely some focus on his disciples. I think more next week than this week. But.
Well, even just the end of chapter 4 and going into chapter 5, they get in the boat and they go across the lake. They're leaving Jewish territory, or they're leaving, Israel. Really, they go across the Sea of Galilee. There's this great storm, and And see, they're still learning about him because they're like, they've been casting out demons, they've been teaching, they've been doing all this stuff, and yet they're amazed when he stops the storm.
Right, that he has control over nature.
Yeah, too. Even the wind and the sea.
The wind and the water. Right?
Yeah. In fact, verse 41, they ask, "Who is this? Who is this guy? We thought we know who this guy is. Yeah. Who is this guy that even the wind and the sea obey him?" And then, he goes over to across the lake, and now he's outside of Jewish territory, and he casts out this demon,
right?
Which so now he's doing miracles. He's doing some teachings and some events, if you want to put it that way, for them. Right. More for them, because that's going to be important, and we'll see that more next week. I think that's going to be really important that they know who he is.
Yeah. So chapter 4 again. Jesus starts teaching in parables, but he also explains it too. Yeah. And I like that. I do think Matthew also has a section in there that's a little easier, at least for me to read. Maybe because there was more verses than one.
A little bit more explanation.
Yeah. So you might want to check out in Matthew too. I think it's Matthew 13 versus Mark 4, which is another mark of how different
fast
they are,
Mark is moving. Yeah.
And then we get into chapter 5.
Yep.
And in chapter 5, it was a man who was living in the tombs, and there was a demon within him called Legion. And it's always like pretty one of the most chilling verses for We Are Many.
Yeah.
Just I always hear it in the vibrato and for We Are Many.
Yeah.
Jesus exorcises him, sends him into pigs, and the pigs all run and commit suicide. And 2,000 pigs.
2,000 pigs. So how many demons was that?
Yeah.
I
don't know. I don't know if it's a 1-for-1 or a 10-to-1 or what. But
right.
But yeah, a lot. So a huge monetary loss. Big in a lot of ways. You brought out in your notes. You brought out a principle that I didn't really think of. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, the townspeople came out, and they saw this guy who had been terrorizing them. They had tried chaining him up. He was breaking the chain, just all this stuff. They were afraid of him. And here he was sitting there with Jesus in his right mind. The demons had gone, the whole thing. And they were more afraid of that.
Of him now being
cured, healed.
Yeah, cured, yeah.
They were more afraid of that than they were of the guy that was, in chains and terrorizing the countryside. And my thought was that we, just as people, we tend to be afraid of things that we don't understand, right? And so here Jesus comes along, and we don't know how long had this guy been like this, right? When did it start? Did he grow up in the area? The whole thing. And Jesus comes along and says, "Go." And all the demons go, and the man is healed immediately.
Right.
And they couldn't process that. They couldn't wrap their head around why this was a good thing, and they got afraid, and they essentially just kicked Jesus out.
Yeah, can you leave, please?
We don't want you here. It's like, how could you not want him here? What if he can do that? What else could he do for you?
Yeah.
And they were so afraid of what happened because they didn't understand it.
Yeah. I always thought that they were afraid of the monetary loss too.
Well, obviously they were upset with the monetary. You lose a herd of 2,000 pigs.
Yeah,
that's food, that's money, that's all sorts of things. But it says, verse 15, they came to Jesus, saw the demon-possessed man sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the one who had the legion, and they were afraid. Yeah. They should have not been afraid anymore.
Right. Yeah, right? This is your miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so then the people who had seen what had happened, they told them about the pigs and everything, and then the people, but it's just that fear thing that gets me. Jesus, the guy wanted to go with Jesus, and so that's the other thing. So now, he's what's going to happen to him? they're afraid of him. They kicked Jesus out. Are they going to kick him out too?
Right.
I mean, he wants to go back to his family. He wants to go back to his friends. What is his situation? And we tend, when we get rejected, when we get pushback from people, we tend to dig down in our little hole. We tend to, fine, I'm just going to go sit in my office. I'm going to go sit in my house and, read my Bible more. And, and Jesus said, no, you've got a story to tell. Right, you've got something they don't have, but they need to hear. So,
go tell it.
Go tell it. Yeah, yep. And it says in verse 20 that he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis what Jesus had done. It's a group of 10 cities. Literally, Decapolis means 10 cities.
Right.
So 10 cities that were on. If this is the Sea of Galilee, and you got the Jordan River and the Dead Sea and Israel's over here and the Mediterranean's over here. The Decapolis was a series of 10 cities that was on basically modern day Jordan on the east side of the Jordan River. So this is Gentile territory. Right. I mean, the word is getting out.
Hence the pigs.
Yeah, right. So the word is getting out all over the place. Yeah. And if Israel's going to reject him, he's like,
yeah, I'll go on this side.
I'll go on that side, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, tons of cool stuff going on here. So
yeah, good. And like you said, we're only about halfway through chapter 5, but that was the reading for this week. Yeah. So obviously there's more in there. We didn't hit every story, but love you to check them all out. Let us know which ones you like.
Yeah, and there'll be things that you see that we didn't talk about, and things that we talked about that you really like. Let us know. Yeah. That helps us and encourages us as we do these things too, right?
Yeah, it really does.
So
it's nice.
Next time we'll come back and we'll finish up chapter 5. We'll get into chapter 6, and chapter 6 is actually sort of long, I think. So I think that might be it. But we'll just keep moving along, and hope you enjoy it. Hope it's helpful, beneficial to you, and we'll see you back here next time.
Bye.